because this should be recording now. And Amelia, is this recording?
Yeah, all good. All
brilliant.
recording.
Okay, good. So this is recorded. So if you want to, you can go back and listen and watch it at a later date. So because we can't do introductions, what I thought we would do is a little poll to find out who you are and where you are from. So we've got, I think, 17, now 18 joined us. And what I'd like you to do is just, and this is anonymous, just click when I launch the poll to tell me where you're from. So are you from a local authority, from a voluntary charity group and a volunteer, or are you a paid employee, or are you none of the above? Okay, so we're nearly all there. We've got one more. That's one. That's fantastic. That's great. Thank you. So I'm going to end the poll. So you can see, hopefully, if I share the results, that where we're all from. So the vast majority of you, nearly half of you, are paid employees with the voluntary and charity sector. Welcome to you. And after that, we've got a few people from local authority, and then we've got some volunteers, and then we've got 3 people that are none of the above at all. And I looked at the names beforehand. There's a lot of people that I don't know. There's some that I do. So hello to Richard and Gina and to Sue and to Leonie. This is weird, me talking to you like this, but there you go. Anyway, so we'll stop sharing that. And get rid of that. Fantastic, thank you. So a little bit about Mind in Somerset and Spark Somerset, both big charities that cover the whole of Somerset. Mind in Somerset is one of 54 independent minds across the country. And the independent bit is really important because we do all our own fundraising. We're not affiliated to National Mind at all in terms of funding. And our role is to support people with mental health issues. Now, in normal times, we do that through face-to-face support, group work, peer support work, that sort of thing, but also over the phone with our Mindline service, which I'll tell you a bit more about later. Almost all of those services have gone online at the moment. But we have another role as well about raising awareness about mental health, which is what I'm doing now in the community, but also my role is particularly around working with corporates and organisations. So I do talks like this and also about fundraising. Spark Somerset, who I am seconded to at the moment and used to work for some time ago. I'm guessing that most of you will know about Spark because you found your way to this webinar anyway. But Spark Somerset is a charity covering the whole of Somerset, the clue's in the title, which supports voluntary and community groups and social enterprises across Somerset. And they do that in a whole host of ways. Although I have to say that in the last few weeks, they're pretty much 100% of their attention has been directed towards COVID-19 community groups. So they've had quite a learning curve themselves over the last few weeks. So that's who we are. So a bit about mental health. So what do we mean when we talk about mental health? And before lockdown, I meant to say actually that most of this webinar is really geared towards the situation we're in at the moment. However, it's certainly relevant. Most of it will also be relevant before lockdown and afterward because the basic tips are the same. But before lockdown, it seemed that you couldn't move for celebrities and sports stars sort of talking about their own mental health issues. And as I was writing these notes last night, I was thinking, yeah, celebrities and sports stars, where are they now in this situation? But suddenly not so relevant anymore. But, and that's great news that we're talking more about our mental health. That's really important. Amelia, can I just say that you're muted on one screen and not on the other?
Yeah,
I don't know
sorry, I've sent the link to our colleague Penny, who's managed to come in as a panellist. Penny, can you mute yourself?
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. Hi, Penny. Yeah, it's great that we're all talking about mental health more and more. And only yesterday I saw somebody on the news saying that scarily it is expected that the effects of mental health is going to outweigh the effects of the virus in the years to come as a result of this lockdown, which is hugely scary, I think, and very concerning. But actually mental health, so we have good mental health and bad mental health, just like we do our physical health. So it's on a spectrum. So you will recognise that we have good days and we have bad days, just like we do with our physical health. This morning I've woken up with a headache. Yesterday was not so bad. So, you know, we're on a spectrum, and most of us are regularly moving on that spectrum. So there are days where we feel really up for it. We feel that everything is tickety-boo, we're functioning well, we're thinking positive. And then sometimes the next day, or sometimes in the same day, something can happen, there can be a trigger, and we're not feeling so good. So it's good to recognise that when we talk about mental health, we're talking about a spectrum, just like we do with physical health. And really, this only becomes a problem if somebody is on the bottom half of that spectrum for a significant period of time. And that could be a week, 2 weeks, and are unable to get out of that bottom half of the spectrum. And that's really when we start talking about mental health illness and mental health issues. The vast majority of us, as I said, we waver and we have good days and bad days. The important thing is to recognise where we are on that spectrum, and if we are able to take some steps to address it. So a little bit about the prevalence of mental health. So it is anticipated that in normal circumstances, 1 in 4 adults will experience a mental illness on the bottom half of that spectrum each year. Now that's a huge figure in itself. It means that a quarter of you listening to this webinar, a quarter of the adults that you know, will experience some sort of mental illness each year. But it's a notoriously difficult figure to pin down. And although we're getting much better at talking about our mental health, for many people it's still taboo. They're not able to talk about it. And also some people will not recognise that they have a mental health issue. So that figure could be more. And I would suspect that when we look back on 2020 and the unprecedented things that are happening this year, that figure could be higher than that 1 in 4. So I thought it'd be good to look at this model from the Mental Health Foundation, the Mental Health Continuum model, because that explains this spectrum a little bit more. So you can see that on one side, the green side, we have healthy. So that's when everything's fine, normal mood fluctuations, normal sleep patterns, full of physical energy, being socially active. That's great. At the other end is when there's a mental illness, which means that there's excessive anxiety or depressed, and moving between those moods very quickly, unable to fall asleep or stay asleep, physical illnesses that go with it, and ironically, given the circumstances we have at the moment, a degree of isolation and avoiding social events. I would say that at the moment I sort of peter somewhere between healthy and reacting. I think that's the vast majority of people do, and I put in place things to try and push me towards that healthy side. Now, I have no problem disclosing to you that when all this kicked off, the week before lockdown and the first week of lockdown, I certainly went into that injured category. I was very anxious about the whole thing. I was very anxious about my own behaviour and other people's behaviour and members of my family. But I like to think that I have enough self-awareness, and I also put into practice some of these tips that I'm going to talk to you about, and gave myself a bit of a talking to, put some things in place, so I was able to move back into sort of reacting and healthy. So the thing that I would encourage you to do is to actually, if you're feeling a bit low or anxious, is just to recognise perhaps where you are on that spectrum in the first instance. So this is going to sound like stating the bleeding obvious, to be perfectly honest, but before we look at some of these tips, I want to stress that these are not normal times. Of course they're not normal times, and therefore, as they're not normal times, it's quite acceptable for us not to feel normal. It's also acceptable for us to react to things in different ways, not the way that we would normally react. And that's okay, and I think we should accept that. A lot of us have had sudden and enormous changes to our everyday lives. And with the backdrop of this horrible virus, it's obvious that this is going to affect people. But we are all different, and it is affecting people in different ways. So there will be some people, and I would imagine it's very few people, for whom this situation has had no effect at all, or barely any effect. There are others who would have experienced, or who are experiencing, a constant low level of anxiety and or depression. There will be others who pretty much plummeted when this happened, and are still in various states of that plummet now, as it were. There's a fourth category, and talking to my friends a lot, as I have done over the last few weeks, I think this is quite common, where actually we're on a roller coaster. So there are bad days, and I think the realization when you can't cuddle your grandchildren or see your elderly parents, or maybe you've lost some money, you're watching the news, all of that, and you're having a really bad day. But then there are other days when you're thinking, I'm loving this peace and solitude. This time is brilliant. I'm not going to get this time back. So now I'm having a good day. And I think that roller coaster of emotions is what a lot of people are experiencing right now. But it's important to remember that we, as I keep saying, these are not normal times, and we are all different. So we are all different, not only in our ability to be able to cope or be resilient, but also what our trigger points are. So as I said, for some people, their trigger points may be the fact that they've lost some work, lost some money. For other people, it might be the fact that they can't cuddle their grandchildren. For other people, it might be just the big wide world. They might have somebody that's ill in their family, or somebody that they know. So different trigger points. And that's important to recognize, not only in ourselves, but also when you're dealing with friends, family, and work colleagues. So not to judge everybody by your own standards. You will see people for whom they are dealing with this in a very different way. And that doesn't make it better or worse than you. It's just different. So we're going to look at now the tips to maintain good mental health and build resilience. But you might be wondering why I've got a spaceship in the middle. The reason for that is because this is not rocket science. And as I was putting this together, it seemed very clear to me that a lot of the tips that I'm going to talk about are obvious. They're really obvious things that we could be doing to make ourselves feel better. But I think if we're struggling a bit, and even if we're not, it's a good thing to be reminded of what's glaringly obvious. It's good to have that brought up front and center, because sometimes those things that are obvious are the first things to go if we're feeling a little bit under the weather with our mental health. Now, some of these things will resonate for some of you and others not. And I come back to the fact that we are all different in how we deal with this, and how our mental health manifests itself. So you may look at some of these tips and say, no, that's not important. I don't need to do that, and I'm fine. Well, if that's your honest reaction, that's okay. But hopefully you'll get, a number of these which you will find useful. So number one, probably the most important, and I think probably the most obvious, is to look after yourself. So self-care. Now, what do I mean by that? I don't mean a mad indulgent pamper session where you have a face mask and a manicure and a pedicure and a long hot bath, although, if you want to do that, that's fine. I just mean looking after some of the basics. So to eat well, sleep well, and get some exercise. Now, I love this quote, "You can't pour from an empty cup," because it's a really good reminder that looking after yourself and a degree of self-care is important, not only for your own mental health, but when you are supporting those around you. So if you are homeschooling, for example, or actually looking after other people that are perhaps a bit down, or physically unwell, or mentally unwell, or just basically need your support, if you haven't put the deposits in the bank yourself, you are going to be unable to make those withdrawals to support those too. So these are two analogies that I really like. You can't pour from an empty cup, and think of it as a bank account. Your mental health is a bank account. So if you put in the deposits, which means looking after yourself, when you need to make those withdrawals, you're going to be in a much better state to be able to do so. So eat well. What I found from talking to my friends over the last 2 weeks is that people's eating and drinking habits has gone one of two ways during lockdown. either people, I heard an expression yesterday, which is the COVID 10, which is apparently is the £10 that people think they're going to put on during lockdown. It's really difficult, isn't it? If you're bored at home, and if you feel that you're feeling a bit down and you want to treat and indulge yourself, it's really easy to slip off the good eating habits. And, that's okay occasionally. But actually, if you're eating badly regularly a lot of the time, and if you're drinking a lot regularly, that's not going to be good for your mental health. There is no doubt that eating as healthily as you can and eating regularly at regular times, and we're going to talk a bit about having a structure to your day, a routine and structure to your day in a bit, but there is no doubt that those regular meal times are going to help with your mental health. Sleeping well, I think, is a bit trickier, especially if you're experiencing some anxiety, or have menopausal wake-up brain at 2 o'clock every morning, like I seem to at the moment. But again, if you can, it's really important to get some routine about your sleep and to get some good quality sleep. So try and go to bed at the same time each night. Set yourself an alarm to get up each time at the morning. Avoid using gadgets at night, so you haven't got that white light in your face before you try and go to sleep. Not eating too late at night, not drinking caffeine, alcohol, all those sorts of things. Again, as I say, they're stating the obvious, but it's a good idea to remember that. I particularly want to talk a bit about exercise, and I hope that you're all making the most of your permitted exercise at the moment. There is a proven link between exercise and good mental health. It's about the release of endorphins that we get when we exercise, and there are a lot of studies that say that it's more valuable than taking antidepressants and lots of other things. And people that exercise regularly, I'm sure, will be able to tell you that actually, if they're feeling a bit down, if they go out for a run or do some exercise, it immediately lifts the mood. So even if you don't exercise normally, I would encourage you to find time in your day for some exercise at the moment, and when we come out of lockdown as well. There's lots that you can do at home, lots of online videos for all sorts of standards and conditions and ages. We hear a lot about Joe Wicks with his daily PE workouts that I know that some parents have chosen to join in with. But what I would say is, if you can, get outside for your exercise, get outside in the fresh air and take in some nature. So not only is there a proven link between good mental health and exercise, there's also a proven link between nature, being outside in the fresh air, and mental health. So if you put those two things together, it's got to be beneficial for you. If you normally go outside for your exercise, for a run or cycle for fitness, I would encourage you just occasionally to leave your fitness tracker at home. It's not always about going faster and further and setting yourself those goals and continuous limits, but actually leave your fitness tracker at home and enjoy the moment, enjoy it for what it is. I had the mad desire to want to go for a run the other night, which is not something I do regularly. And normally if I do run, I have headphones in to distract myself from the running and also to block out any traffic noise. But I left my headphones at home the other day, and it was really a revelation to actually run on streets that I can't normally run on because of the traffic, enjoying the quiet streets and the bird song. And it really helped. I was really energized actually when I came back. So this is a gratuitous picture of my little dog, Dexter, in the long grass. Actually, the grass isn't that long, it's just that he's really small. So why am I showing you a bit of this picture? Well, I've lived where I live for 22 years, and I am finding new routes most weekends on my exercise, which I wouldn't normally do because I'm normally too busy doing other things. So Dexter normally gets, 3 short walks rather than this long one. And I'm beginning to notice things which I would never normally notice. The peace, the quiet is beautiful, but spring is wonderful as well. And I am practicing, and I'm not there yet, but I'm practicing not being in a rush. So I recognize when I'm out that my subconscious is still telling me that I need to get back. I need to get back and get on with things. But I'm actually trying to be mindful and bring myself back to think, don't need to do that. This isn't about being in a rush and getting fit necessarily. It's just enjoying the moment. So I hope you can accept that, and then don't mind me sharing a picture of my dog. So let's have a little look at another poll. As I said, don't worry, this is anonymous. So I want you to just tell us and others, where are you with your permitted exercise at the moment? So let's find this poll. So launch polls. I want you to tell me, yes, you're exercising because you exercise regularly anyway. Yes, you're exercising and you're doing more than you did before lockdown, or no, I'm not exercising at all. So we've got a few more to go. Okay, one more to go. Brilliant. Okay, lovely. Thank you. So this is great that there's, a lot of you are exercising because you have done anyway. And it's great to see that a few of you are exercising more than you did before lockdown. And that might be because you have more time, or it might be because the government is encouraging us to do it. Who knows? There's one person that is not exercising, and again, that's fine. I'm sure that there's very good reasons for that. So thank you for sharing that. Oh no, I haven't. There you go. I've shared that now with you so you can see the results. Lovely. Stop sharing that. Let's get rid of that. Lovely. Thank you very much. Oops. So the next tip I want to talk to you about is about having routine and structure. Now, outside of lockdown, most of us would have naturally had this anyway. We would have naturally had a rhythm to our day. So we are likely to have got up at the same time each day, getting the children to school, us going to work, meal times, activities in the evening, children's activities at weekend, give a flow and a structure to our lives. But that's been interrupted at the moment, and it's particularly been interrupted if you're working from home, or if you've been furloughed, or, and hats off to you, if you're homeschooling at the moment. I just think that's amazing if you're homeschooling. As I said, hats off to you. That's incredibly difficult. So most of us are adjusting to a rather new, strange way of life. And as tempting as it might be to stay at home all day in our pajamas and watch Netflix, there's no doubt that regular routines are essential for our identity, self-confidence, and ultimately our mental health. So I would encourage you to try and start your day at roughly the same time each day and have a bit of structure. So you're eating roughly at the same time, you're doing your exercise, you're doing your chores, walking the dog if you have one. So there is some sort of structure. Really doesn't have to be military precision at all. I know that I had a few goes at this. As I said, I struggled at the beginning and I had no structure at all. I work 25 hours a week at the moment, and I thought what I'll do, so I've got something to do every day, is I'll do 5 hours a day. That didn't work for me. I realized that I needed that flow of having the day when I don't work. So I now spread those 25 hours over 4 days, which seems to be working much better for me. So I'd say have a go at it and just see what works for you. So we've got another poll here just to see what sort of daily routine that you've got during this current lockdown situation. So let me see if I can share that with you. So if you can just tell me, do you have a daily routine? And yes, it's been easy to do. Yes, but I've had to work at it. No, but I'd really like one. And no, I'm fine as I am. So a few more votes to go. Just a few more. And one more. Somebody's thinking about it. We'll just give them a few more seconds. Okay, right, let's go with that. Now, I'm really pleased to see that actually the vast majority of you have said, yes, you've got a daily routine and it's been easy to do. That's really, really good news. Now, I suspect, and if I could talk to you face to face, I would find out, I suspect that's because some of you are still working. Some of you still have that need to get up to a computer and actually do your daily job. And that's really, really good news. So I'm pleased to hear that. There's a couple of you that don't yet, but would really like one, and maybe we can offer some tips on that, and perhaps this webinar would help. And there's one person who was in the same boat as me, which was, yes, I've had to work hard at it. So thank you for that. Right, let's get a wrap up poll. In order to get that structure and routine, you might find that a daily to-do list is helpful. Again, I know that my menopausal brain can't survive at the moment without a daily to-do list, and I write that every morning. I would encourage you to think about the small things as well as the big things on that to-do list, so that, because they're just as important, and so that you have a sense of achievement at the end of the day. There is something really special, I think, about ticking off those things that you've achieved at the end of the day, and be realistic about what you can achieve. There's nothing more disheartening, I think, than writing a whole list of things and then finding you've only done some of them, and what you will concentrate on is the things that you haven't done rather than the things that you have. However, with a to-do list, I would say don't be too hard on yourself. So when all this started, I don't know about you, but I felt that there was an enormous pressure that by the time that lockdown finished, we would come out of it with a perfect house, a perfect garden. We would learn a language. We'd learn to play the piano. We'd be the fittest that we've ever been. And as time's gone on, I think we realised that that's not the case, and we can only do what's right for us. And as I said before, we're all individuals, so it's really about doing what's right for us. And maybe it's okay to occasionally have that day where you feel that you achieve very little. So if that is the day of being in your PJs and watching Netflix, as long as you enjoyed it and you didn't worry too much about it, and nobody around you in your family or household particularly suffered as a result, then that's fine. You achieved something. You've had a day of relaxing and recuperating. So that's brilliant. So I think a to-do list is useful, but don't be too hard on yourself on those goals that you need to achieve during this time. So the next tip, I think, is around maintaining your good mental health, is about staying connected. And there's a weird contradiction at the moment that whilst we're being encouraged to be socially distant and to self-isolate, there's never been a more important time to stay connected with others. Now, of course, there are a number of ways that we can do that. I realise, of course, that not everybody has a perfect family. But it might be that this is now a really good time to actually connect with members of your household like you've not connected with before or for some time, without the treadmill of going to work, those daily activities, all those other things. Spending time in a household together might be the great opportunity to talk to each other more, to have meals together more, to play games, watch films, all that sort of thing. My elder sister has suddenly found that she's got her 19 and 21-year-old back home with her from university, which I know that she was dreading. But what she has found over time is that whilst they're all having their own space and doing their own thing, in the evenings they eat together, they each in turn choose a film that they want to watch that evening. And actually she's saying that she hasn't spoken to them or haven't had time as a family like this for some time, and is actually finding it really useful and, dare I say, enjoyable. And I actually think the two kids are as well, although they probably wouldn't admit it. As I say, I realise not everybody has a perfect family, but if you can, it's a good time to make it work. Another way to keep connected with people is when you're out on your daily exercise. I mean, we have been in a really fortunate situation in this country that we have, throughout the duration, been allowed out for this exercise. I, for one, was dreading the time which I honestly thought was coming when we wouldn't be able to, but it looks like that's not going to happen. So when you're out and about on your exercise, again, if you can and if you want to, take the time to connect with people. Those brief 2-minute socially distanced conversations with people are often enough to make those connections that you need. And that's especially important if you live on your own and are working from home, and you might not see or talk to anybody else all day. As I've said before, I've lived in my village for some time, and on my dog walks, I have seen and spoken to people, and I have really quite proper, meaningful conversations that I've only ever acknowledged before. And it's been great. You know, people are genuinely asking each other how they are and listening to the answers. And we'll come back and talk about that a bit more towards the end. And then, of course, there's the virtual connections. I mean, I don't think I'd heard of Zoom a few weeks ago. I'd certainly heard of Skype, of course. But now to Zoom or to be Zooming, it seems to be quite a usual activity for people. It's new to a lot of people, but it's a brilliant way of keeping in contact with people. It's not the same as meeting your friends and work colleague in person. I understand that, but it is a way of keeping in contact. I'm hearing some wonderful stories about people who are talking to relatives and friends regularly who really wouldn't have done so in the past. They're checking in to make sure that they're okay. And again, I, for one, without Skype and Zoom, I have an 89-year-old mum that's in a care home at the moment, and it's been really important to me to be able to see her and speak to her in those ways. For those of you that are still working, or even for those of you that are not, a video call doesn't have to be for an actual purpose. It could be just to have a virtual coffee break. Maybe it replaces the chats that we used to have by the photocopier or by the kettle, but just 10 minutes, perhaps once or twice a day, just to have that virtual coffee break with people. The technology is there, so why don't we use it? And I think that actually this video conferencing is genuinely going to change the way that we communicate in the future, certainly on the work front. I hope not on a social front. I hope we will still meet people directly, but to keep in contact with friends and family particularly, I think this is going to, and work colleagues, I think it's going to change in the future. So this is the last poll. Just out of curiosity really, I would like to know whether you are using Zoom, Skype or any other video conferencing to keep in contact with people at the moment. So let's share this last poll, launch poll. So I want you to tell me whether you're using video conferencing. Yes, you've always done it. Yes, it's all new to me. No, you're not, but you would love to. No, I'm fine as I am. And I guess in hindsight, those last two questions are probably a bit daft on my part because you're doing it now. Yeah, we've got a few more people to vote. Just a couple more, one more. Okay, all right, that's great. So this is interesting. So there's a few people out there that have always done it, and that's great. And like me, there's people out there where it's all new to them, and it's been a big learning curve. But I know that there's a lot of grandparents out there that are using it now to see and speak to grandchildren, and other people like me who are using it to speak to elderly grandparents as well, elderly parents rather as well. Oh, I haven't shared the results. There you go, you can see the results there. This is classic that I'm still getting used to the technology. So we'll stop sharing that, get rid of that. Part of staying connected, of course, is staying informed. And at the moment, there is so much news and information about. There's just an overload of information, I think. And it seems to me that 90% of all news seems to be coronavirus related, both good and bad. And anything that's not seems a little irrelevant, actually, at the moment, and is not particularly high profile in the news. I think for your own mental health, it's good and important to stay informed and be informed, but I would really encourage you, and I'm sure some of you have found this yourselves over the last few weeks, to limit your intake and to be aware of where you're getting your news and information from. So being informed is a really good thing. Wouldn't want to encourage people to have their heads in the sand, but if you are prone to worrying, anxiety or depression, however low level, I would encourage you to ask yourself, is all this new information and this constant stream of information really beneficial to me? I'd encourage you to have enough to be able to make an informed view, and then probably limit it, no more. I watched the 10 o'clock news early on in the process and couldn't sleep afterwards, so I'm now not doing that. I have half an hour of BBC breakfast in the morning with a cup of tea, and then have the Radio 2 news during the day. I don't know if any others of you are Radio 2 listeners, but I think there's only so many ways that Jeremy Vine can cover the pandemic at the moment. It's now beginning to get very, very tenuous and very annoying as well. I watch the occasional daily briefing, but switch off at the questioning. And it's, you know, as I said, we're all different. As some of you can take in all that information and it doesn't affect your mental health at all. Some of us are having to really limit what we're seeing and hearing and how we interpret that. So the next tip is a bit about mindfulness, and we've heard a lot about mindfulness. It was a real buzzword about a year ago, and I would encourage you over this time to help maintain your mental health to practice some mindfulness. Now, what do I mean by mindfulness? I'm not talking about full-on daily meditation, but do it if that works for you. That's great. But really, I'm talking about concentrating on the here and now, being mindful and being in the moment. Now, I've already said, and it's obvious, that these are not normal times, and they're hugely unique as well. And they're unique, I think, for two reasons. One is this situation is affecting all of us, not just in our own local communities, but nationally and globally as well. We hear a lot of talk about we're all in the same boat. I heard a great expression the other day, which I really like, which is we're not all in the same boat, but we're all in the same storm. And some of us have bigger boats than others. I thought that was a really good expression, because there is no doubt that this is going to be affecting you differently, depending on your resilience, depending on your triggers that I talked about before. But also, you know, if you're in a big house with a nice big garden and you live in the southwest, then this is going to be affecting you very differently than if you're in an overcrowded flat in London with no outdoor space and you've lost your job as well. So I think the expression we're all in the same boat isn't quite right, but we're all in the same storm, but with different sized boats is a great one. So as I said, this is unique because it's affecting us all, but also B, none of us know how this is going to pan out in the next few weeks, months, and even years. We can speculate, and there's an awful lot of speculation going on in the news at the moment, but none of us really know how this is going to affect us. And I think to have a degree of worry and anxiety about this is natural. It's perfectly natural. But it's also good to recognise that worry and anxiety are wasted emotions in terms of your own mental health. They don't actually move you on in any way whatsoever. It seems really obvious, but you can't change what happened yesterday, and only your thoughts and actions now are going to influence the future. So going to influence what happens in the next hour, the next few hours, or tomorrow. So it makes absolute sense to put your positive, as much as you can, to put your positive energy into focusing on today, right now, and to focus on what you can control rather than worry about what you can't. Now, that's quite a big concept to get your head around, but I do really like this quote. So it's from Viktor Frankl, who was an Australian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor. So I'm guessing he knows his stuff. But this quote, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Now, this is, I think, particularly relevant to the situation that we're in. There is very little that us as individuals can do to change the bigger picture at the moment, apart from staying in and staying safe. And of course, the collective amount of that is really huge. So there's little that we can do to change the bigger picture. But actually, what we can do is to challenge ourselves to change the way that we think about it. And actually, that might be in small steps. But if you do that gradually, that's going to help your mental health no end. So when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Hugely powerful quote, I think. We're nearly there, but just towards the end, I just want to talk a little bit about gratitude. I've got a quote here of what gratitude is from Cambridge Dictionary. It's a word that we use a lot, but if we really think about it, what does it mean at the moment? These are difficult times, there is no doubt about that. But I would encourage you that if you're feeling a bit low and out of sorts, or even if you're not, to take some time every day to think about what you're grateful for at the moment. And believe me, there will always be something to feel and be grateful for. If it helps, write that down. And some people write that down at the end of the day. It becomes a gratitude journal. And I know, because I've done it in the past, that believe me, within a couple of days, you will be looking out for and noticing those things that you're grateful for each day to write down in your journal each night. And it becomes hugely powerful because you start to focus on the things that you're grateful for rather than the things that you're worried and depressed about. So I just want to try something here. Using the chat, can you just, using no more than 2 or 3 words, just type in something that you're grateful for right at this moment? Now, I'm not sure if I can see this, Amelia. Can I? Can I see this chat?
You should be able to if you open your chat box at the bottom.
Okay, mine's at the top.
Oh, so, the top.
Okay, right. So, just encourage you to type a couple of words in. Oh, lovely. My allotment, great. Hedgehogs in the garden, being financially comfortable. My healthy lungs, gosh, yeah. Living in Somerset. I think you can all see these as well. Grateful for the sunshine in the garden. Wow, these are lovely, fantastic. The sun, better at sleeping at night. Somebody said they were grateful for their parents posting them some yeast. Isn't that wonderful? Who'd have thought it a few weeks ago, how grateful we'd be for that. The birds, Claire, as well. Claire Chick, and you're grateful for the birds. That's a real nice connection there. I can hear the birds outside my bedroom window at the moment. Thank you for that. That's lovely. That's really, really positive. Richard, yeah, being able to talk to your partner in Hong Kong, yeah, really important. How difficult would that be without it? And Amelia, talking to your dad, yeah, I know that from talking to my mum as well. Lovely, thank you very much. So I said a little bit about when you're out and about asking people how you are, how they are. Before lockdown, I would have said that these words, how are you, excuse me, are really used instead of a hello in this country. We're British, we tend to say, hello, how are you? We're not really interested in the answer. We often don't listen to the answer. I think there's been a real sea change over the last few weeks. I'm noticing that people are saying, how are you? They really mean it and they want to hear the answer. And I really hope that continues after this situation is over. If there's one way that you can support other people with their own mental health, it's to ask that question. And not only ask it once, if people do the usual thing, which is, yeah, I'm fine, is ask it again. And really, really take the time to listen to people when they tell you. As I said, I hope many things come out of this lockdown situation, but I really hope that we continue to ask that question and listen to the answer. So, lovely Captain Tom. I don't know about any of you, but I can only look at this chap and I start to well up. I think his positive spirit is absolutely amazing. And if anybody saw the documentary last night about him, he's a remarkable man. So what did he say? He said, tomorrow is going to be a good day. And far be it from me to misquote Captain Tom. I would want to change that to say today is going to be a good day. Remember, we talked about the here and now. We're always looking at tomorrow. As Captain Tom said last night in the documentary, tomorrow never comes. So I'd encourage you to think that today is going to be a good day. So that's just about it. I want to share a few things with you before we have some questions. So I talked about the Mindline telephone support that Mind in Somerset run. This is a free service, and since the lockdown, it is now open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's manned by a team of highly trained volunteers. If you or anyone you know are really struggling with your mental health, I'd encourage you to phone that number. Also, there's some websites here, and we will be sending this out, so you don't need to write this down. But the top one, the National Mind website, has some good tips for your well-being during this pandemic. The Mind in Somerset website has some more resources and talks about some of the training and some of the other things that we can offer. And you'll know about the Spark Somerset website, because that will probably be how you came here in the first place. But there's lots of other training and webinars and really, really useful information on there. And I'd encourage you to look at it. And just at the bottom there are my 2 email addresses if anyone wants to get in contact with me at all. So I think we're just about there. Where are we? 50 minutes. Gosh. Has anybody got any questions, Amelia? Let's hope that I can answer them.
We haven't had any come in just yet. We had Richard
Questions
earlier.
or comments, let's say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Richard put in the chat earlier, setting SMART goals can be a lot more rewarding than setting tasks. And that is the...
Yeah, SMART goals, particularly around, you know, Richard will know that through coaching and stuff. I think that personally, I'd say at the moment, if you're struggling a little bit, just those small daily things are okay. Don't beat yourself up too much with, you know, with having all your goals being SMART. But if you can, yeah, make your goals SMART. For people that don't know what SMART means, it's SMART, it's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and with a time scale. Thank you, Richard.
We've had one comment or question. I work for an organisation that supports adults with learning disabilities, a group that is particularly affected at this time. Do you have any tips or advice on how to reach out and how to approach mental health with vulnerable adults who are extremely isolated? What about those who do not have access to technology?
Oh gosh, I think that's a really, really difficult one. I think some of the tips that I've mentioned, so having some sort of routine and some sort of looking after themselves is good. I've seen some resources online recently, and I'll see if I can find these, Amelia. There's been a book, an illustrative online book written for adults with learning difficulties to explain to them about the current situation. And if I can find that again, I'll see if we can send that out, because I think that might be really useful. But I think to encourage some of those other things that we talked about around self-care and routine and structure is really useful. And, anything else?
We've had Sue, who's another Sparky. As the Mindline is for young people too, do you know how many young people have been making use of this service?
Oh, Sue, no, I don't actually. I don't know that answer, but I can find out and let you know. Yeah, don't know. Sorry.
Richard, I've heard a lot of people are volunteering and upskilling themselves if they are on furlough, which is allowed, and which is something Spark is working on. So if you are looking for volunteers or skilled volunteers, especially, you know, for PR, for social media, things that experts can do at home, please do get in touch, because we are looking to start partnerships up that way as well.
We've had a huge uptake, haven't we, in people volunteering, Amelia? Just tell us the figures and what it's gone from.
As of yesterday, we had 1,298 people sign up to the Corona Helpers platform. So that's amazing. I think 1,300 almost volunteers in Somerset to help Somerset organisations and groups. Yeah, absolutely amazing.
And that's from scratch. That's from a zero start, isn't it? So that's amazing. Okay. Anything else?
Penny, quite a few buddy type phone services around. We can send out a list. Maybe phone support could help. So absolutely, we've got a befriending document that we could send to you, Lisa. That has it.
Yeah, that would be brilliant. And that's you know, we seem to be talking a lot about video conferencing now, but just, you know, getting in contact with people on the phone is hugely important. Lovely. Couple more maybe.
A lovely comment from Richard. Nice to hear the community is coming together to help others, and that's absolutely it, isn't it? Throughout all of this amazing kind of coming togetherness.
It's absolutely incredible, and I think that it's good to remember that. And I do think there's been a you know, and some of the, I think the news that I talked about before has shifted. I think there's a lot of good news stories now. there's also an awful lot of statistics, and it's how you actually manage those statistics in your head as well. But I do think there's been a sea change, and some of the community support has been absolutely incredible, no doubt about that. And actually, if I was talking about mental health outside of lockdown, one of the 5 key stages is around giving and volunteering and, you know, giving something out. And I didn't do that this time because it, you know, you're limited in what you can do, but there's no doubt that you feel better if you give something out to people.
A comment from Phil. I think the expression making time for things is more relevant than finding times, as it means focusing on positive actions.
Oh yeah, very good, thank you. So the making time, did you say making time rather than finding time? Yeah, brilliant, thank you. Thank you.
Finding that it's really useful just to check in with people once a week by whatever way with the how are you seems to be making a massive difference.
A huge difference. And I've really noticed how as I said, that people are now asking that question and genuinely listening to the answer. I think in the past we would have been horribly embarrassed if you asked somebody how they were and they really told you. That wasn't really what you wanted, was it, often? But okay, lovely. Should we have one more and then we'll wrap it up, I think?
At the moment, we're kind of, yeah.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. Thank you very much, everybody. Amelia, we're never quite sure how these things actually finish, but Amelia is going to send out the slides, I think, and also a connection for this recording. Although, does Amelia still say recording paused?
That's right, I've been recording it on my end as well, so
good.
Fingers crossed one of us will have it.
Good. And there were some other links and bits that we'd send out as well. Amelia's also going to send out, what did you call it? It's not an evaluation form, you're calling it something else?
Impact feedback.
Oh, impact feedback, that's a new one, just to find out what you thought. Really useful, because it's not just good feedback for me, for the first one of these that I've done, but also to spark for informing future webinars and whether this is a good way of doing things. And who knows, it might be done like this in the brave new world. So lovely, thank you very much. Enjoy your day. I'm about to go and walk my dog, and I hope you'll have a good day and manage to get some sunshine as well. Thanks very much. Look after yourselves. Bye-bye.